Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel in Manhattan glittered like a jewel box, its crystal chandeliers casting prisms of light across the marble floor. The air smelled of expensive perfume and aged champagne, and the soft hum of a jazz quartet floated above the chatter of New York's elite billionaires in tailored tuxedos, socialites dripping in diamonds and power players who could make or break empires with a single phone call. At the center of it all stood Zora Hamilton, a vision in a crimson Laquan Smith gown that hugged her curves like a lover's promise. Her smooth brown skin glowed under the lights. Her curly hair swept into an elegant updo, and her deep brown eyes burned with a fire that could silence a room. She held a microphone, her voice steady but sharp as a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her Harlem cadence cutting through the murmurs, "I'm here to tell you a story about lies, betrayal, and a truth that's been buried too long." The crowd leaned in, glasses paused mid-sip. Across the room, Vanessa Langley froze her champagne flute trembling in her manicured hand. Her sleek brunette hair framed a face that was usually smug, but now her green eyes darted nervously. Beside her stood Julian Wentworth, his tall frame impeccable in a Tom Ford tuxedo, his sandy blonde hair catching the light, his sea-green eyes locked on Zora, a mix of guilt and longing flickering in them, like a man who'd just realized he'd lost something irreplaceable. Zora tapped her phone and a grainy audio clip crackled through the ballroom speakers. Vanessa's voice, unmistakable, filled the air. "I took her letters. Daddy, Julian thought I was her. It was so easy to make him hate her." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in a Dior gown whispered to her date, "Is that Roland Langley's daughter?" Zora's lips curved into a tight smile as she pressed play again. Another clip. "Zora's father was in the way, so we made him the villain. $500 million gone, and no one blinked." The room erupted in murmurs. Vanessa's face drained of color, her diamond earrings glinting as she shook her head. "That's not me," she cried, her voice shrill. "She's lying." But the crowd wasn't buying it. A man in a pinstripe suit muttered, "That sounds like Roland Langley's work." Zora's heart pounded, but she stood tall, her gown shimmering like a beacon of defiance. Julian stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Zora," he said, his voice low, but carrying across the room. "Is it true? All of it?" His eyes searched hers, pleading for something. Forgiveness, maybe, or a chance to undo the past. Zora's chest tightened. She remembered the boy she'd met at Yale, the one who'd slipped a handwritten letter into her bag during a lecture, his shy smile lighting up her world. That boy was gone, replaced by this man who'd believed Vanessa's lies and broken her heart. "It's true," Zora said, her voice steady but laced with pain. "Vanessa stole my letters. Julian. She made you think I was the villain. And her father, Roland Langley, framed my dad for stealing $500 million. He destroyed my family." She paused, her eyes locking on Vanessa. "But tonight, that ends." The crowd buzzed, phones already out, recording the drama. Vanessa lunged forward, her heels clicking on the marble. "You're delusional, Zora. You're just a nobody from Harlem trying to claw your way into our world." But her words fell flat, drowned by the weight of the truth. A prominent lawyer in the crowd spoke up. "If that audio's real, Ms. Langley, you've got some explaining to do." Zora's gaze flicked to Julian. For a moment she saw the boy from Yale again, the one who'd kissed her under the dim lights of a jazz club, his hands warm on her waist as he whispered promises of forever. But 6 years of pain stood between them. 6 years of a hollow marriage, a divorce, and a betrayal she couldn't forgive. Not yet. She turned away, her heels echoing as she walked toward the exit, the crimson gown trailing like a flame. Julian called after her. "Zora, wait." But she didn't stop. The glass doors of the Four Seasons swung open and she stepped into the Manhattan night. The city's pulse thrumming around her taxi horns. Neon lights, the distant wail of a siren. Her breath caught as she leaned against a street lamp, the weight of the moment crashing over her. She'd done it. She'd exposed Vanessa Langley to the world. But the fight was far from over, and her heart was a battlefield. 2 months earlier, Zora Hamilton stood in her small Harlem apartment, the scent of cornbread and collard greens wafting from the kitchen. The place was cozy, a sanctuary of color and memory, walls lined with her abstract paintings inspired by the rhythms of Harlem and the stories of her father, Calvin Hamilton. A vinyl of Nina Simone spun on the record player, her soulful voice weaving through the air. Zora's mother, Etta, bustled in the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour, her warm brown eyes crinkling as she hummed along. Zora sat at a worn wooden table, staring at the divorce papers in front of her. Her fingers traced the signature line. Zora Hamilton, 6 years ago. She'd been Zora Wentworth, wife of Julian Wentworth, heir to a real estate and tech empire. Their marriage had been a lie built on obligation and shadowed by a scandal that had torn her world apart. Her father, Calvin, founder of Hamilton Tech, had been accused of embezzling $500 million, a crime that drove him to his grave. The shame had chained Zora to Julian, a man who'd come to see her as a villain, thanks to Vanessa Langley's lies. Etta slid a plate of cornbread onto the table, her voice soft but firm. "Baby, you don't need that man. You're Zora Hamilton, stronger than steel. Harlem raised you, and you're gonna rise." Zora managed a small smile, her curls bouncing as she shook her head. "I don't need him, Mama, but I need the truth. Daddy didn't steal that money. Someone set him up, and my gut says it's Roland Langley." Etta's eyes darkened. "Roland Langley's. A snake always was. But you be careful, Zora. Men like him don't play fair." Zora nodded, her fingers brushing a small canvas on the table, a painting she'd done of her father. His warm laugh captured in swirls of blue and gold. Tucked behind the frame was a slip of paper she'd found in his old desk, a code scrawled in his handwriting, BVI 4729. It pointed to an offshore account, the kind used to hide dirty money. Her heart raced. This was her starting point, the key to unraveling the lies that had destroyed her family. She thought of Julian, the man she'd loved at Yale. They'd met at a jazz club during a lecture series, his shy smile catching her off guard as he slipped a letter into her bag. For months, they'd written to each other, their words weaving a bond she'd thought unbreakable. He'd given her a silver ring engraved with their initials, promising to meet after graduation. But when her father's scandal hit, Zora stopped writing too, consumed by grief. Vanessa had swooped in, stealing the letters and claiming Zora's place in Julian's heart. By the time Zora realized the truth, she was trapped in a marriage with a man who barely looked at her. A knock at the door startled her. Etta opened it, revealing Jasmine Carter, Zora's best friend and a reporter for the New York Times. Jasmine's braids swung as she strode in her leather jacket and boots, giving her a no-nonsense vibe. "Girl, you look like you're plotting a revolution," she said, tossing her bag onto the couch. Zora grinned. "Maybe I am. Look at this." She showed Jasmine the code. "I think it's tied to Daddy's case. I need to find out who framed him." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "Roland Langley's name keeps popping up in my research. His company Langley Group skyrocketed after Hamilton Tech tanked. That ain't a coincidence." Etta set a plate of fried chicken in front of Jasmine, her voice stern. "Y'all better watch your backs. Langley's got eyes everywhere." Zora's phone buzzed, a text from Julian. We need to talk. I'm sorry. She stared at it, her heart twisting. Part of her wanted to believe he could change, but the pain of their marriage lingered. She deleted the message, her resolve hardening. She wasn't fighting just for herself, but for her father's legacy, for the company he'd built to change lives. Hamilton Tech was her birthright, and she'd be damned if she let it stay in ruins. The memory of that night in Harlem faded as Zora stood outside the Four Seasons, the Manhattan skyline glittering like a promise. The gala had been her first strike, a declaration of war against Vanessa and Roland Langley. But the road ahead was treacherous, and Julian's presence stirred feelings she'd buried deep. She thought of the jazz club at Yale, the way his lips had brushed hers, his hands steady on her hips as they swayed to a saxophone's wail. That was the Julian she'd loved, not the man who'd let Vanessa poison his mind. A cab pulled up, its yellow paint gleaming under the streetlights. Zora slid inside her gown, pooling around her like spilled wine. "Harlem," she told the driver, her voice firm as the city blurred past neon signs. Hot dog carts, the pulse of a place that never slept. She felt a spark ignite. This was her beginning, a chance to reclaim her truth. Vanessa and Roland thought they'd broken her, but they'd underestimated Zora Hamilton. She was Harlem's daughter, forged in fire, and she was just getting started. The cab rolled through the streets and Zora's mind raced. She'd exposed Vanessa tonight. But Roland was the real enemy, a man who'd built an empire on her father's grave. She needed more evidence, and she needed allies. Jasmine was already digging, and there was Nico Alvarez, a hacker who owed her a favor. And then there was Julian. Could she trust him? Did she even want to? Her fingers brushed the silver ring on a chain around her neck, a relic of their Yale days. It was a reminder of what they'd had, and what they'd lost. As the cab turned onto 125th Street, the neon glow of Harlem welcomed her home. The Apollo Theater's marquee blazed street vendors, hawked roasted peanuts, and a group of kids breakdanced to a boombox's beat. This was her world, her strength. She'd fight for her father, for Hamilton Tech, for herself. And if Julian wanted to be part of that fight, he'd have to prove he was worth it. Hey y'all, if Zora's fire and that gala showdown got your heart racing, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Tell me what you loved most. Was it Zora's clapback at Vanessa, or Julian's desperate plea? We're just getting started. And trust me, the drama's about to heat up. Stay tuned for more. Love Lies and Harlem Nights. The Tennessee sun dipped low, painting the rolling hills of Hamilton Farm in shades of gold and amber. The air carried the sweet scent of clover and hay, mingling with the earthy tang of a nearby creek. Acres of green pasture stretched out, dotted with grazing horses and framed by a weathered red barn. Under the shade of an ancient oak tree, Zora Hamilton sat cross-legged on a quilt, her sketchbook open on her lap. Her crimson sundress fluttered in the breeze, her curls loose and wild, catching the light like a crown. She dipped her brush in cobalt paint, tracing the curve of the horizon. But her mind was miles away, back in Manhattan, where she'd left Vanessa Langley's lies in tatters, and Julian Wentworth's pleading eyes burned into her soul. She'd come to Tennessee to escape the city's chaos, to dig through her father's old farm for clues about the scandal that had stolen him from her. Calvin Hamilton had poured his heart into Hamilton Tech, a company meant to lift communities like Harlem into the future. But Roland Langley had framed him for embezzling $500 million, a lie that drove Calvin to his grave. The code Zora found in his desk, BVI 4729, had led her here to the place where her father used to sit, under this very oak, telling her stories of a world where dreams could outshine greed. A rustle in the grass snapped her out of her thoughts. She looked up, her breath catching, as Julian Wentworth stepped into view. He wore a faded flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms, and jeans that hugged his lean frame. His sandy blonde hair was tousled, his sea-green eyes soft but intense, like the ocean before a storm. In his hand was a thermos of sweet tea, a peace offering that felt achingly familiar. "Zora," he said, his voice low, carrying that slight southern drawl he picked up during summers in Tennessee. "Didn't expect to see you here." Her heart thudded, a mix of anger and something warmer, something dangerous. "This is my daddy's farm, Julian." "What magenta? What are you doing here?" she asked, setting her sketchbook aside. Her tone was sharp, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity. Julian crouched beside her, setting the thermos on the quilt. "My family's got a place a few miles down the road. I come here to clear my head. Didn't know you'd be out here painting the sunset like some kind of artist." Zora's lips twitched, but she held back a smile. "I'm not here for the view. I'm looking for answers. You shouldn't be here, Julian. Not after everything." He looked down, his jaw tightening. "I know I messed up, Zora. That night at the gala, I heard you. I heard the truth, and I'm so damn sorry I didn't see it sooner." She stood brushing grass from her dress, her curls bouncing with the motion. "Sorry doesn't fix 6 years, Julian. You believed Vanessa over me. You let her make me the villain in your head, and now you think you can just show up with sweet tea and make it right." Julian rose, stepping closer, his eyes locked on hers. "I don't think that. But I'm trying. Zora, I was blind, and I hate myself for it. Let me help you find the truth about your dad. Please." Zora's chest tightened. She wanted to push him away to protect the heart he'd broken. But there was something in his voice, raw, desperate, that reminded her of the boy who'd written her letters at Yale, the boy who'd kissed her in a jazz club, his hands warm on her waist, promising a future. They never got to live. "Fine," she said finally, her voice softer but firm. "But this isn't about us. It's about my daddy." "You want to help prove it?" Julian nodded, a spark of hope in his eyes. "Deal. Wanna take a ride? The stables are stocked, and I know a trail that'll blow your mind." The Tennessee hills unfolded like a painting as Zora and Julian rode side by side, their horses' hooves kicking up dust on a winding trail. The air was warm, thick with the scent of pine and wildflowers, and the creek beside them sparkled under the fading sun. Zora's mare, a chestnut named Ruby, tossed her mane, matching Zora's restless energy. Julian rode a black stallion, his ease in the saddle reminding her of the summers he'd spent here far from Manhattan's glitz. "You still ride like you were born on a horse," Julian said, glancing at her with a grin. "Remember that time at Yale when we snuck into the equestrian club? You nearly broke your neck showing off." Zora laughed, despite herself, the memory loosening something in her chest. "And you nearly cried when I didn't fall. You were such a softie back then." "I'm still a softie," he said, his voice dropping. "For you." Her breath hitched, but she kept her eyes on the trail. "Don't, Julian. Not now." They rode in silence until the trail opened to a clearing by the creek, where the water shimmered like liquid gold. The sun hung low, casting long shadows, and a chorus of crickets began to hum. Zora dismounted, tying Ruby to a tree, and walked to the water's edge. Julian followed his boots, crunching on the gravel. "This was Daddy's favorite spot," Zora said, her voice soft. "He'd bring me here, tell me I could be anything. A painter, a CEO, a damn president. He believed in me, Julian. And Langley took him away." Julian stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "I'm gonna help you make it right, Zora. Whatever it takes." She turned to face him, her brown eyes searching his. The air between them crackled heavy with unspoken words. Julian reached out his fingers, brushing her cheek, and Zora's resolve wavered. She remembered their first kiss at Yale, the way his lips had tasted of whiskey, and promised the way his hands had pulled her close like she was his whole world. Now, under the Tennessee sky, that feeling flooded back. "Julian," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We can't." But he didn't pull away. His hand slid to her waist, warm through the thin fabric of her dress, and he leaned in, his breath grazing her lips. "Tell me to stop, Zora. Tell me and I will." She didn't. Instead, she closed the distance, her lips meeting his in a kiss that felt like coming home. It was slow at first, tentative, then fierce, like a dam breaking. His hands roamed her back, pulling her closer, and she melted into him, her fingers tangling in his hair. The world narrowed to the heat of his touch, the taste of sweet tea on his lips, the soft rush of the creek behind them. Her dress slipped off one shoulder, and Julian's lips trailed down her neck, sending shivers through her. "Zora," he murmured against her skin. "I never stopped loving you." The words snapped her back. She pulled away, breathing hard, her heart racing. "No," she said, stepping back, adjusting her dress. "You don't get to say that. Not yet. I can't trust you, Julian. Not after everything." His face fell, but he nodded, his hands dropping to his sides. "I'll earn it back. I swear." Zora turned away, her eyes stinging as she stared at the creek. The kiss had been a mistake, a crack in her armor. She couldn't afford to let Julian in, not when her father's legacy was on the line. Back at the farmhouse, Zora rummaged through her father's old office. A dusty room filled with books, blueprints, and faded photos. The oak desk creaked as she opened a drawer, revealing a ledger with strange entries, transfers to an offshore account that didn't match her father's meticulous records. Her pulse quickened. This was it, a thread to pull a link to Roland Langley's scheme. She called Jasmine, her voice urgent. "Jas, I found something. A ledger with transfers that don't add up. Can you dig into Langley's bank records?" Jasmine's voice crackled through the phone, her Harlem accent thick with excitement. "Girl, I'm already on it. But heads up, Vanessa's spreading lies. She's telling everyone you're using Julian to save Hamilton Tech. The blogs are eating it up." Zora's stomach twisted. Let her talk. I've got bigger fish to fry. As she hung up, a creak in the hallway made her freeze. Julian stood in the doorway, his flannel shirt untucked, his eyes soft. "You okay?" he asked. She held up the ledger, her voice steady. "This is my fight, Julian. You want to help start by telling me why you didn't question Vanessa's lies, why you let her win." He flinched, but his gaze didn't waver. "I was a coward, Zora. My mom, Eleanor. She pushed me toward Vanessa, said she was the right fit. I was lost when you stopped writing. Vanessa had your letters, knew things only you could have known. I should have fought harder. I'm fighting now." Zora's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing, and hers was still in pieces. That night, Zora drove back to Harlem, the ledger tucked in her bag. The city welcomed her with open arms. Neon lights, street musicians, the pulse of 125th Street. She stopped at her mother's soul food restaurant, Etta's Kitchen, where the air smelled of fried chicken and peach cobbler. Etta was behind the counter, her apron smudged with flour, her smile warm as she waved Zora over. "Baby, you look like you've been through it," Etta said, sliding a plate of cornbread across the counter. "What's got you so twisted?" Zora sighed, picking at the cornbread. "Found something at the farm. Mama-proof Langley might have framed Daddy, but Julian's back and he's..." complicating things. Etta's eyes narrowed. That boy broke your heart once. Don't let him do it again. Before Zora could reply, the restaurant's stage lit up. A local jazz band struck up a soulful tune and Etta nudged her. Go on, sing something. Let it out. Zora hesitated, then took the mic. She'd written a song last week inspired by her father's fight and her own. As the saxophone wailed, she sang her voice rich and raw, weaving a story of loss and resilience. The crowd swayed, some wiping tears, others clapping along. In the back, Julian stood, his eyes fixed on her, a mix of awe and regret on his face. When the song ended, the room erupted in applause. Zora stepped off the stage, her heart lighter, but her resolve stronger. Julian approached, but she held up a hand. Not tonight, she said. I need time. He nodded, his voice soft. I'll wait, Zora, as long as it takes. As she left the restaurant, the Harlem night wrapped around her like a hug. The ledger was her weapon, Jasmine was her ally, and Julian was a question mark. Vanessa's lies were spreading, and Roland Langley was still out there pulling strings. But Zora was ready. She'd kissed Julian today, felt the fire of what they'd had, but she wouldn't let it burn her down. This was her fight, and she was playing to win. The Hamptons night shimmered with wealth, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and champagne. Zora Hamilton stood on the deck of a sleek yacht moored off East Hampton, its polished teak gleaming under strings of fairy lights. The vessel, a floating palace owned by a Wall Street tycoon, buzzed with New York's elite men in Brioni suits, women in Chanel gowns, their laughter mingling with the clink of crystal glasses. A jazz trio played a smooth rendition of Summertime, the notes drifting over the water. Zora's emerald green Oscar de la Renta dress hugged her curves, the silk, catching the light like a deep forest pool. Her curls were swept into a low bun, a single gold hoop earring glinting as she scanned the crowd, her brown eyes sharp with purpose. She wasn't here for the caviar or the small talk. She was here to get close to Roland Langley, the man who'd framed her father, Calvin Hamilton, for stealing $500 million. The ledger she'd found at the Tennessee farm pointed to Langley's dirty deals, and tonight, with her best friend Jasmine Carter by her side, Zora aimed to find someone, anyone who could confirm it. But the air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing, and Vanessa Langley's presence across the deck only made it worse. Jasmine leaned against the railing, her leather jacket a stark contrast to the glittering crowd. Her braids swung as she sipped a martini, her eyes narrowing at Vanessa, who held court near the bar, her diamond necklace sparkling like a weapon. That girl's got nerve, Jasmine muttered, her Harlem accent thick. After you roasted her at the gala, she's still out here acting like she owns the place. Zora's lips curved, but her smile was tight. Let her play, queen. I'm here for her daddy. If I can find one of his old cronies, we might get the proof we need to bury him. Jasmine raised her glass. To burying snakes. But watch your back. Zora, Vanessa's got that look like she's planning something nasty. Zora nodded, her fingers brushing the silver ring on a chain around her neck, a relic from her Yale days with Julian Wentworth, the memory of their kiss in Tennessee under the golden glow of a creekside sunset still burned in her chest. It had been a mistake letting him that close, but the fire between them was undeniable. She'd pushed him away, told him she couldn't trust him. But his promise to help her fight lingered like a melody she couldn't shake. As if summoned by her thoughts, Julian appeared at the edge of the deck, his tall frame cutting through the crowd. His navy blazer hugged his shoulders, his sandy blonde hair catching the light, and his sea-green eyes found hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. He moved toward her, weaving past a group of hedge fund bros, his presence commanding without trying. Zora, he said, his voice low, that slight southern drawl softening the edges. You look incredible. She crossed her arms, the silk of her dress rustling. Save the charm. Julian, I'm working. You shouldn't be here. He stepped closer, undeterred. I heard Langley might show tonight. Thought you could use backup. Jasmine raised an eyebrow, smirking. Backup, huh? You sure you're not just chasing our girl? Julian's cheeks flushed, but he didn't break eye contact with Zora. I'm here for her, Jasmine. Whatever she needs. Before Zora could respond, a sharp laugh cut through the air. Vanessa Langley sauntered over, her champagne flute dangling from her fingers, her Chanel gown shimmering like liquid silver. Her green eyes glinted with malice as she sized Zora up. Well, well, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Zora Hamilton crashing our little party. Tell me, did you borrow that dress, or is Harlem selling couture now? The crowd nearby hushed, heads turning. Zora felt the weight of their stares, the unspoken judgment of a world that saw her as an outsider. But she'd grown up in Harlem, where you learned to hold your head high, no matter who tried to knock you down. She stepped forward, her voice calm but cutting. Vanessa, I don't borrow anything, unlike you. I don't need to steal someone else's life to feel important. A few guests gasped. Others whispered. Vanessa's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, tossing her hair. Cute. But let's be real. Zora, you're just a sad little girl chasing a dead man's dreams. Your father was a thief, and you're what? A painter with a grudge. Zora's blood boiled, but before she could fire back, Julian stepped between them, his jaw tight. That's enough, Vanessa. You don't get to talk to her like that. Vanessa's eyes flashed, her voice rising. Oh, Julian's still playing the hero. You think she's your lost love? She's using you to save her daddy's pathetic company. Wake up! The crowd buzzed, phones discreetly filming. Zora's heart pounded, but she refused to let Vanessa win. She raised her chin, her voice ringing out. My father built Hamilton Tech to lift people up, Vanessa. Your father tore it down to line his pockets. I'm here to set that right, and no amount of your lies will stop me. The guests murmured in approval. A few clapping. A woman in a sapphire gown nodded, whispering, She's got guts. Vanessa's face reddened, but before she could retort, a new voice cut through the tension. Vanessa, darling, let's not make a scene. Eleanor Wentworth, Julian's mother, glided over, her pearl necklace gleaming against her cream silk dress. Her grey eyes were cold as they landed on Zora, her smile polite, but laced with disdain. Ms. Hamilton, I admire your passion, but this isn't the place for family disputes. Zora's stomach twisted. Eleanor had never hidden her disapproval of her, not during their marriage, and certainly not now. The older woman's words were a subtle jab, a reminder that Zora didn't belong in their world. But Zora wasn't the naive girl she'd been 6 years ago. With all due respect, Mrs. Wentworth, she said, her tone even, this isn't a dispute. It's a reckoning, and I'm just getting started. Eleanor's smile tightened, but she said nothing, steering Vanessa away. Julian touched Zora's arm, his voice low. You okay? She pulled away, her eyes flashing. I don't need saving, Julian. I need you to pick a side. He opened his mouth to reply, but Jasmine tugged Zora's elbow. Come on, girl, let's work the room before Vanessa tries round 2. Zora and Jasmine moved through the yacht, their eyes scanning for anyone tied to Langley Group. The deck was a maze of wealth waiters offering lobster canapes, a bar stocked with $500 bottles of Dom Perignon, the ocean stretching endless and black beyond the railing. Zora's heels clicked on the teak, her mind racing. The ledger from Tennessee was a start, but she needed a witness, someone who'd seen Roland Langley's hands get dirty. Near the stern, she spotted a gray-haired man in a pinstripe suit, his face weathered but sharp. Jasmine whispered, That's Victor. Crane used to be Langley's CFO. Retired after Hamilton Tech went down. Word is, he didn't leave happy. Zora approached her smile warm but calculated. Mr. Crane, Zora Hamilton. I'm Calvin Hamilton's daughter. Crane's eyes widened, then softened. Calvin was a good man. I was sorry to hear about. Everything. Thank you. Zora said, her voice steady. I'm trying to clear his name. I found evidence suggesting Roland Langley framed him. Would you be willing to talk? Crane hesitated, glancing around. Not here. Langley's got ears everywhere. But call me tomorrow. I might know something. Zora slipped him her card, her pulse quickening. I will. Thank you. As Crane walked away, Jasmine grinned. Girl, you're a natural. But we gotta move. Vanessa's watching us like a hawk. Zora followed Jasmine's gaze. Vanessa stood by the bar, whispering to a man in a black suit, her eyes locked on Zora. A chill ran down Zora's spine. Vanessa wasn't just a spoiled heiress. She was dangerous, and Zora had underestimated her once before. The drive back to Harlem was quiet, the city's lights blurring past Zora's car window. Jasmine sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone. Vanessa's already spinning her story. She said, her voice grim. Some blogs saying, you're a gold digger, using Julian to fund Hamilton Tech. It's trending. Zora gripped the wheel, her knuckles tightening. Let them talk. I've got Crane's number and that ledger. We're close. Jasmine nodded, but her eyes were worried. Just be careful. Zora Langley plays dirty, and Vanessa's got her claws out. Back at Etta's kitchen, the restaurant was alive with late-night regulars, couples sharing peach cobbler, a poet reciting at the open mic, the air thick with the smell of fried chicken and hot sauce. Etta was behind the counter, her apron tied tight, her smile fading as she saw Zora's face. Baby, what's wrong? Zora sank into a booth, her dress still shimmering from the yacht. Vanessa's coming for me, Mama and Eleanor. Wentworth's backing her, but I got a lead tonight. A guy who might know what Langley did to Daddy. Etta slid a plate of cornbread across the table, her voice fierce. You're stronger than them. Zora Harlem's in your blood. Don't let those fancy folks make you forget it. Zora took a bite of cornbread, the buttery warmth grounding her. I won't. But Julian, he's trying. Mama, I don't know if I can trust him. Etta's eyes softened. Trust your heart, baby, but make him earn it. As Zora ate, her phone buzzed a text from Julian. I'm on your side. Zora always. She stared at it, her heart torn. The yacht had been a battlefield, and Vanessa's words still stung, but Crane's promise was a lifeline, a chance to unravel. Langley's lies. She was one step closer to justice, but the cost was rising. Vanessa was plotting, Eleanor was watching, and Julian was a wild card. Zora leaned back, the neon glow of Harlem outside the window. This was her fight, and she'd play it her way, fierce, fearless, and unapologetically herself. The Blue Ridge Mountains rose like silent giants, their peaks cloaked in mist, the air crisp with the scent of pine and damp earth. Zora Hamilton stood on the porch of a cedarwood cabin, its windows glowing against the twilight. The cabin sat beside a glassy lake, its surface mirroring the first stars of the evening. A fire crackled inside, casting flickers of light across the porch's weathered boards. Zora's navy sweater hung loose over her jeans, her curls tucked under a knit cap, but her brown eyes were sharp, scanning the gravel path leading into the forest. She'd come to Virginia's wilderness to meet a witness who claimed to have proof that Roland Langley framed her father, Calvin Hamilton, for embezzling $500 million, but the isolation of the cabin miles from the nearest town made her skin prickle with unease. The ledger from Tennessee and Victor Crane's cryptic promise at the Hamptons yacht party had led her here. Crane Langley's former CFO had texted her yesterday, "Meet me at Blue Ridge. I have documents, come alone." Zora hadn't told anyone except Jasmine Carter, her best friend who'd insisted on staying on speed dial. The memory of Vanessa Langley's venomous words on the yacht calling her a gold digger, mocking her. Harlem roots still stung, but Zora had learned to turn pain into fuel. She was here for her father, for Hamilton Tech, for the truth. And yet, Julian Wentworth's face kept creeping into her thoughts, his sea-green eyes, his desperate plea at the gala, the kiss by the Tennessee creek that had nearly undone her. A twig snapped in the distance and Zora's hand tightened around the pepper spray in her pocket. The forest was silent now, too silent. The only sound the soft lap of the lake against the shore. She stepped inside, locking the door, and checked her phone. No signal. Her heart thudded, but she forced herself to focus, spreading the ledger on the cabin's oak table. The firelight danced across its pages, illuminating transactions that didn't add up millions, funneled to an offshore account, signed with a forgery of her father's name. The cabin's door rattled, and Zora froze. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady, despite the knot in her stomach. "It's me," came a familiar voice, low and urgent. "Julian Wentworth." Zora's shoulders relaxed, but only slightly. She opened the door, and there he was. Tall, his flannel jacket dusted with pine needles, his blonde hair mussed from the wind. His eyes were wide with worry, a flashlight in his hand. "What the hell are you doing out here alone?" "Zora," he asked, stepping inside. "Jasmine told me you were meeting someone. This place is too remote." She crossed her arms, her cap slipping back to reveal her curls. "I told you to stay out of this, Julian. I don't need a babysitter." He set the flashlight on the table, his jaw tight. "I'm not here to babysit. I'm here because I care, and because Langley's dangerous. You can't do this alone." Zora's chest tightened. She wanted to snap at him, to push him away like she had in Tennessee, but the sincerity in his voice chipped at her defenses. "Fine," she said. Her tone clipped. "But you stay quiet. Crane's supposed to show any minute." Julian nodded, glancing at the ledger. "This what you found at the farm?" "Yeah," she said, softening slightly. "It's proof Langley set my daddy up. If Crane's got more, we can take him down." Before Julian could reply, a sharp knock echoed through the cabin. Zora opened the door to find Victor Crane, his gray hair disheveled, his suit rumpled like he'd driven all night. His eyes darted nervously, scanning the darkness. "Miss Hamilton," he said, his voice low. "We don't have much time." Inside, Crane sat by the fire, clutching a manila envelope. "I worked for Langley 20 years, he said, his hands trembling. "He paid me to keep quiet when he framed your father. Forged signatures, fake accounts. It was all him. These documents prove it." He slid the envelope across the table, his voice dropping. "But there's something else." Julian knew. "Vanessa was lying about you. Not the whole truth, but enough. He didn't act because his mother threatened to cut him off." Zora's blood ran cold. She turned to Julian, her eyes blazing. "Is that true?" Julian's face paled, his hands clenching Zora. "Is it true?" she demanded, her voice rising. He looked down, shame etching his features. "I suspected Vanessa wasn't you. The letters, they didn't feel right. But my mom, Eleanor," she said, "I'd lose everything if I chased you. I was weak. Zora, I'm so sorry." Zora's heart shattered, the betrayal cutting deeper than she'd expected. "You knew," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "You knew, and you let me drown in that marriage, in those lies." Before Julian could respond, a crash splintered the night. The cabin's window shattered glass, spraying across the floor. A figure in black lunged through a glint of metal in their hand. Zora screamed, grabbing the pepper spray, but Julian was faster. He tackled the intruder, pinning them to the ground. Crane bolted for the door, clutching the envelope, but another figure blocked his path. A second attacker, masked and silent. "Zora, run!" Julian shouted, struggling with the first assailant. She didn't hesitate. Grabbing the ledger and envelope, she sprinted into the forest, her boots sinking into the damp earth. The lake's edge glowed under the moon, but the trees closed in their branches, clawing at her sweater. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the sound of pursuit crunching leaves, heavy footsteps echoing behind her. She ducked behind a pine, her heart pounding, and fumbled for her phone. Still no signal. A hand grabbed her shoulder, and she swung the pepper spray, only to stop short. It was Julian blood, trickling from a cut on his cheek, his eyes wild. "They're gone," he panted. "I knocked the first guy out, but Crane's hurt. We need to get back to the cabin." Zora's legs trembled, but she nodded, clutching the documents. "Who were they?" "Langley's men," Julian said grimly. "Vanessa must have tipped them off." They stumbled back to the cabin, where Crane sat slumped against the wall, a gash on his arm. The attackers had vanished, leaving only broken glass and the stench of fear. Zora knelt beside Crane, her voice urgent. "You okay? We need to get you to a hospital." Crane shook his head, wincing. "I'll be fine. Take the documents. They're your only shot. But watch your back. Langley won't stop." Julian helped Crane to his car, then turned to Zora, his face etched with guilt. "I should have told you," he said, his voice breaking. "I was a coward, and I lost you because of it. But I'm here now. Zora, I'll fight for you." She wanted to scream to shove him away, but the firelight caught his eyes, and she saw the boy from Yale, the one who'd kissed her under jazz club lights, who'd promised forever. Her anger warred with the ache in her heart, and for a moment she let herself feel it. "We need to clean that cut," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. She led him to the cabin's small bathroom, where a first aid kit sat on a shelf. The room was cramped, the air warm from the fire outside. Zora dabbed antiseptic on his cheek, her fingers brushing his skin, and the closeness sent a shiver through her. Julian's breath hitched his hand, catching hers. "Zora," he murmured, his voice low. "I don't deserve you, but I love you. I always have." Her heart raced, the documents forgotten for a moment. She leaned in, her lips grazing his, and the kiss deepened, fierce and desperate. His hands slid to her waist, pulling her close, and she felt the heat of him, the steady beat of his heart. The firelight danced across her skin, her sweater slipping off one shoulder as his lips trailed to her neck, igniting sparks she'd tried to bury. For a moment, they were just Zora and Julian, two souls lost in each other, the world fading away. But reality crashed back. She pulled away, breathing hard, her eyes glistening. "I can't do this," she said, stepping back. "Not until I know you're all in. No more secrets, Julian." He nodded, his eyes pained but resolute. "No more secrets, I swear." Back in Harlem, Zora sat in Etta's kitchen, the restaurant's neon sign casting a pink glow through the window. The air smelled of fried catfish and hot sauce, and a jukebox played Aretha Franklin's Respect. Etta bustled behind the counter, her apron smudged with flour, while Jasmine sat across from Zora, flipping through the documents from Crane Girl. "This is gold," Jasmine said, her braids swinging as she pointed to a page. "Bank records, emails. Langley bribed half the city to frame your dad. We need to get this to my editor." Zora nodded, her fingers tracing the silver ring on her chain. "But Vanessa's not done. Those guys at the cabin, she sent them. Etta set a plate of peach cobbler in front of Zora, her voice stern. "You're playing with fire. Baby, Langley's got no soul, and that Vanessa's just as bad. You sure about this?" Zora's eyes hardened. "I'm sure Mama Daddy deserves justice, and I'm not stopping till I get it." Jasmine's phone buzzed and her face fell. "Zora, you need to see this. You need to see." She showed her a blog post, its headline screaming, "Harlem hustler is Zora Hamilton, using Julian Wentworth to save her father's failed empire." The article was laced with Vanessa's lies, painting Zora as a schemer. Zora's stomach churned, but she forced a smile. "Let them talk. We've got the truth." As she ate her cobbler, her phone lit up with a text from Julian. "I'm with you. Zora, whatever comes next." She stared at it, her heart torn. The Blue Ridge attack had shaken her, but Julian's sacrifice fighting for her, bleeding for her, had shifted something he'd known about Vanessa's lies and failed her. But he was trying to make it right. Could she let him back in? Or was she just setting herself up for another heartbreak? Outside Harlem pulsed with Life Street vendors' laughter, the beat of a drum circle. Zora stood the documents in her bag, her resolve like steel. Vanessa was plotting, Langley was closing in, and Julian was a risk she wasn't sure she could take, but she was. Zora Hamilton, forged in Harlem's fire, and she'd fight with everything she had. The Manhattan skyline glittered like a crown, its lights piercing the night through the floor-to-ceiling windows of a penthouse atop a Fifth Avenue tower. The room was a study in excess velvet sofas and deep sapphire, a marble bar stocked with rare whiskeys and a chandelier dripping with crystals that caught the glow of the city below. Zora Hamilton stood by the window, her black Vera Wang gown flowing like ink, her curls cascading over one shoulder. The silver ring on a chain around her neck glinted as she sipped a glass of champagne, her brown eyes scanning the room. Tonight was the eve of her big move, a gala, where she'd unveil the evidence to bury Roland Langley and his daughter Vanessa, for good. But the air felt charged, like a storm about to break, and Zora knew she was walking into a trap. The penthouse belonged to a tech mogul, hosting a pre-gala reception, a who's who of New York's power players. Zora had come to rally support, to ensure the city's elite would back her when she exposed Langley's crimes. The documents from Blue Ridge Bank records, emails, and Victor Crane's testimony were locked in a safe at Etta's kitchen, ready for tomorrow's showdown. But Vanessa's lies were spreading like wildfire, painting Zora as a schemer, using Julian Wentworth to revive her father's failed Hamilton Tech and Eleanor Wentworth. Julian's mother was circling her influence, a shadow. Zora couldn't shake. Jasmine Carter leaned against the bar, her leather jacket swapped for a sleek gold dress, her braids pulled into a high bun. She handed Zora a fresh glass, her voice low. "Girl, this place is a snake pit. Vanessa's over there whispering to every rich dude in sight, and Eleanor's giving you the evil eye." Zora followed Jasmine's gaze. Vanessa Langley stood near a grand piano, her silver Dior gown shimmering, her green eyes glinting as she laughed with a group of investors. Eleanor was nearby, her pearl earrings catching the light, her smile polite but cold as she glanced at Zora. The weight of their judgment pressed on her. But Zora had grown up in Harlem, where you learned to stand tall, no matter who tried to cut you down. "Let them stare," Zora said, her voice steady. "Tomorrow I'm ending this. Langley's going down, and Vanessa with him." Jasmine raised her glass. "To justice. But watch your drink." Zora. "I don't trust Vanessa not to pull something dirty." As if on cue, a waiter approached, offering Zora a flute of champagne. His eyes darted nervously, and Zora hesitated, her instincts screaming. She set the glass on a table untouched, and caught a flicker of frustration in Vanessa's expression across the room. Her pulse quickened. Jasmine was right. Vanessa was playing dirty. Before Zora could move, Julian. Wentworth entered the penthouse, his tall frame cutting through the crowd like a blade. His charcoal suit hugged his shoulders. His blonde hair swept back and his sea-green eyes found Zora's with a mix of determination and fear. He'd been at her side since the Blue Ridge attack, fighting to prove he was all in, but the revelation that he'd suspected Vanessa's lies years ago still hung between them, like a ghost. "Zora," he said, his voice low as he reached her. "You okay? Jasmine texted me. You were here." She crossed her arms, the gown rustling. "I'm fine, Julian, but you shouldn't be here. Your mom's already looking at me like I'm the help." His jaw tightened. "I don't care what she thinks, I'm with you. And I heard Vanessa's planning something tonight. We need to get you out of here." Zora's heart thudded, but before she could respond, Vanessa sauntered over, her champagne flute dangling from her fingers. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she said, her voice dripping with venom. Zora still clinging to Julian like a lifeline. "Or is this just another act to save your daddy's pathetic company?" The crowd nearby hushed heads. Turning, Zora felt the familiar sting of Vanessa's words, the implication that she didn't belong in this world of wealth and power. But she'd faced worse than Vanessa's petty jabs. She stepped forward, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "You're scared, Vanessa. I've got proof. Your father framed mine, and tomorrow the world's gonna know. No amount of your lies can stop that." Vanessa's smile was brittle, but her eyes burned. "Proof. You're delusional. Julian, tell her. She's just a Harlem hustler who'll drag you down with her." Julian's hand found Zora's, his grip firm. "You're wrong, Vanessa. Zora's the strongest person I know, and I'm done letting you manipulate me." The crowd buzzed phones, discreetly filming Vanessa's face, reddened, but she leaned in, her voice a hiss. "You think you've won. You don't know what's coming." Zora. Before Zora could reply, Nico Alvarez, the hacker who'd been digging into Langley's account, slipped through the crowd. His dark eyes were wide with urgency as he pulled Zora aside. "That waiter, I saw him spike your drink. Vanessa paid him. I got it on video." Zora's blood ran cold. She glanced at the untouched champagne flute, her stomach churning. "She tried to poison me." Nico nodded, his voice low. "Not enough to kill you, but enough to knock you out. She wanted you out of the way for tomorrow." Jasmine overheard, her eyes blazing. "That's it. We're taking her down tonight." But Zora held up a hand, her mind racing. "No. We stick to the plan. Tomorrow at the gala, we hit them with everything. This video just makes it sweeter." Nico hesitated, then nodded. "I'll keep the footage safe, but Zora Langley's desperate. He knows you're close." As Nico slipped away, Eleanor Wentworth approached, her pearl earrings glinting. "Ms. Hamilton," she said, her voice smooth but laced with ice. "I must ask you to stop this vendetta. It's unbecoming and it's hurting my son." Zora's anger flared, but she kept her tone even. "Your son's hurting because he believed your lies, Mrs. Wentworth. I'm fighting for my father's name, and I won't stop because you're uncomfortable." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're making a mistake. People like you don't belong in our world." The words cut, but Zora stood taller, her voice ringing out. "People like me. We built this world, Mrs. Wentworth, and I'm here to take it back." The crowd murmured, some nodding in respect. Eleanor's face tightened, but she turned away, her heels clicking on the marble. Julian squeezed Zora's hand, his voice low. "You're incredible." Zora pulled her hand free, her eyes glistening. "I don't need compliments, Julian. I need you to stand up to her." "To all of them." He nodded, his face etched with determination. "I will. I swear." The penthouse drama lingered as Zora drove back to Harlem, the city's neon lights blurring past her Range Rover's windows. Jasmine sat beside her, scrolling through the video Nico had sent. "This is gonna bury Vanessa," she said, her voice grim. "But we need to be ready. Langley's not gonna let you walk into that gala without a fight." Zora gripped the wheel, her knuckles tight. "I know, but we've got the documents. Crane's testimony and now this video. It's enough." Jasmine glanced at her, her eyes soft. "And Julian? What's the deal there? He's been all in since Blue Ridge." Zora's throat tightened. "He's trying, Jazz. But he knew Vanessa was lying and he didn't fight for me. I don't know if I can let him back in." Jasmine reached over, squeezing her hand. "You'll figure it out, girl. Harlem girls always do." At Etta's kitchen, the restaurant was quiet. The late-night crowd gone. The air smelled of cornbread and hot sauce, and a jukebox played Billie Holiday's "God Bless the Child." Etta was wiping down the counter, her apron smudged with flour, her eyes worried as Zora walked in. "Baby, you look like you've been through hell," Etta said, setting a plate of fried catfish in front of her. "What happened?" Zora sank into a booth, the gown pooling around her. "Vanessa tried to drug me tonight, Mama, and Eleanor's trying to scare me off. But I'm so close. Tomorrow, I'm taking Langley down." Etta's face hardened. "That family's poison. Zora, you be careful, and that Julian boy, what's he doing in all this?" Zora sighed, picking at the catfish. "He's fighting for me, but I don't know if I can trust him. Not after everything." Etta sat beside her, her voice soft but fierce. "Listen to your heart, baby, but don't let it blind you. You're Zora Hamilton, and you don't need anyone to save you." Zora nodded, her eyes drifting to the jukebox. Billie's voice filled the room, a reminder of the strength her mother had passed down. She thought of the gala, the moment she'd been building toward since that night at the Four Seasons. Vanessa's attempt to drug her was a desperate move, proof the Langleys were scared. But Julian's presence was a complication she hadn't planned for his touch at the penthouse, his promise to stand by her. It stirred feelings she'd buried deep. Could she forgive him? Did she even want to? Her phone buzzed a text from Julian. "I told my mom. I'm done with her games. I'm all in." "Zora for you." She stared at it, her heart racing. The documents were ready. The gala was hours away and Vanessa was cornered. But the real battle was inside her, between the woman who wanted justice and the woman who still loved the boy from Yale. Outside Harlem glowed its neon signs and street music, a heartbeat she knew by heart. Zora stood the documents in her mind, her resolve unbreakable. Tomorrow she'd face the Langleys, the Wentworths, and the world. She was Harlem's daughter, forged in fire, and she was ready to burn it all down. The Manhattan TV studio pulsed with energy, its bright lights illuminating a sleek set where Zora Hamilton stood poised and unbreakable. Her tailored blazer hugged her curves, her curls swept into a high bun, and her brown eyes burned with a fire that could light up Harlem. The audience leaned forward, cameras zooming in as she held up a stack of documents. Bank records, emails, and Victor Crane's testimony, all proving Roland Langley framed her father, Calvin Hamilton, for embezzling $500 million. The host, a sharp journalist named Lena Brooks, leaned in her voice. Crisp. "Ms. Hamilton, you're saying Langley Group built its empire on a lie?" Zora's voice was steady, her Harlem cadence cutting through the studio's hum. "Not just a lie, Lena. A crime. Roland Langley bribed officials, forged my father's signature, and stole $500 million to destroy Hamilton Tech, and his daughter Vanessa helped cover it up." She tapped her phone, and Nico Alvarez's video played on a screen behind her, the waiter at the penthouse admitting Vanessa paid him to drug Zora's drink. Gasps rippled through the audience, and Lena's eyes widened. The studio erupted in murmurs as Zora pressed on. "My father built Hamilton Tech to lift communities like mine, to give kids in Harlem a shot at the future. Langley took that from us. But today, I'm taking it back. The cameras caught every moment, the footage streaming live to millions across town in a Langley Group boardroom. Roland's face turned ashen as investors pulled out their phones, buzzing with news of his downfall. Vanessa, watching from her penthouse, hurled a wine glass at the wall, her empire crumbling. By morning, the police had warrants for both their names splashed across every headline, from the New York Times to TMZ. Langley Group collapses in scandal. Hamilton Tech rises again. Zora left the studio, the city's pulse thrumming around her taxi horns. Neon lights, the distant beat of a street drummer. Her phone buzzed with texts from Jasmine Carter. "Girl, you did it. Harlem's proud and Nico. Told you we'd burn them down." But it was the text from Julian Wentworth that stopped her cold. "I'm so proud of you, Zora. Can we talk Tennessee tomorrow?" Her heart twisted. Julian had fought for her, bled for her in Blue Ridge, stood by her through the penthouse trap. But the scars of his betrayal, knowing Vanessa's lies and not acting, still lingered. Could she let him back in? She drove to Etta's kitchen, where the neon sign glowed pink against the Harlem night. The restaurant was packed, regulars cheering as Zora walked in, their voices a chorus of pride. Etta, her apron smudged with flour, pulled her into a hug, her eyes glistening. "Baby, you cleared your daddy's name. He's smiling down on you." Zora's throat tightened as she sank into a booth, the smell of fried catfish and peach cobbler wrapping around her like a hug. I felt him. Mama in the studio. It was like he was there. Etta slid a plate of cornbread across the table, her voice soft. "You're his legacy." "Zora, now what about that Julian boy? He's been fighting for you." Zora's fingers brushed the silver ring on her chain, a relic of their Yale days. "I don't know. Mama, I love him, but I'm scared. What if he breaks me again?" Etta's eyes softened. "Love's a risk, baby. But you're Harlem's daughter. You're strong enough to take it." The Tennessee sun hung low, bathing Hamilton Farm in a golden glow. Zora stood under the ancient oak tree, its branches heavy with memory. The air smelled of clover and earth. The creek nearby murmuring softly. Her denim dress fluttered in the breeze, her curls loose and wild, and a canvas rested against the tree. A painting she'd started, swirls of blue and gold capturing her father's spirit. She'd come here to think, to decide what came next for Hamilton Tech, for her heart. The documents had restored her father's name, and investors were lining up to revive the company with plans to fund tech programs in Harlem. But Julian's text had brought her back to Tennessee, to the place where they'd kissed, where she'd felt the fire of what they could be. A rustle in the grass made her turn. Julian stepped into view, his flannel shirt open at the collar, his blonde hair catching the light. His sea-green eyes were soft but nervous, a canvas tucked under his arm. "Zora," he said, his voice low, that southern drawl wrapping around her name. "Thank you for coming." She crossed her arms, her heart racing. "You said we needed to talk, so talk." He set the canvas down, revealing a painting, two figures by a lake, their hands entwined, the Blue Ridge Mountains rising behind them. It was them captured in vibrant strokes, a love letter in color. "I painted this," he said, his voice trembling. "For you. For us. I know I failed you, Zora. I knew Vanessa wasn't you, and I let my mom's pressure stop me from fighting. But I'm fighting now." I told her I'm done with her games, done with the Wentworth empire, if it means losing you. Zora's breath caught the painting blurring as tears stung her eyes. She thought of the letter she'd found that morning, tucked in her father's old desk at the farm. It was addressed to her, written before his death. "Zora, my heart forgive those who hurt you, but never stop fighting for what's right. You're my dream come true." The words had shifted something in her, loosening the anger she'd held so tight. Her father had forgiven even in his darkest hour. Could she? "Julian," she said, her voice soft. "You broke me. 6 years, I carried that pain, but I see you trying. I feel it." He stepped closer, his hands reaching for hers. "I love you, Zora. I loved you through those letters, through the lies, through everything. I'm not perfect, but I'm yours, always." Her heart swelled and she let him pull her close, their foreheads touching. The creek's murmur faded, the world narrowing to the warmth of his breath, the steady beat of his heart. "I love you too," she whispered, and the words felt like freedom. He kissed her slow and deep, his hands framing her face. The kiss was a promise, a vow to rebuild what they'd lost. The sun sank lower, casting a golden glow over the farm, and Zora felt her father's presence, his pride in her strength. They pulled apart, breathless, and Julian's eyes sparkled with something new. Hope. "Stay here," he said, stepping back. "I've got something to show you." The oak tree was transformed by dusk, its branches strung with fairy lights, their soft glow dancing in the breeze. A small crowd gathered Etta, Jasmine, Nico, even a few Harlem regulars who'd driven down to celebrate. A table held soul food from Etta's kitchen, fried chicken collard greens, cornbread, and a speaker played Nina Simone's "Feeling Good." Zora's heart raced as Julian led her to the tree, his hand warm in hers. He stopped turning to face her, and the crowd hushed. "Zora Hamilton," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "You're my home, my heart, my everything. I loved you through letters, lost you through lies, and found you through truth." He dropped to one knee, pulling a silver ring from his pocket, the same one from Yale engraved with their initials, now joined by a new inscription. "Forever will you marry me, not as my wife again, but as my partner, my equal, my love." Zora's breath caught tears streaming down her cheeks. She thought of their Yale days, the pain of their marriage, the woman she'd become. Julian had hurt her, but he'd changed, and so had she. Her father's letter echoed in her mind. Forgive, but fight. And she knew this was her fight for love, for a future they could build together. "Yes," she said, her voice clear, a smile breaking through her tears. "Yes, Julian, I'll marry you." The crowd erupted in cheers, Etta clapping loudest, her eyes shining. Julian slipped the ring onto Zora's finger, its weight familiar yet new, and pulled her into a kiss that felt like a sunrise. The fairy lights glowed, the creek sang, and Harlem's spirit pulsed through the Tennessee night. Later, at a makeshift reception under the stars, Zora danced with Julian, her denim dress swaying his flannel shirt soft against her cheek. Etta raised a glass, her voice booming. "To Zora, the strongest woman I know, and to love the kind that fights to come back." The crowd toasted and Zora laughed her heart full. She and Julian slipped away to the farmhouse where a fire crackled in the hearth. Under the soft glow they came together, their kisses deepening their hands, exploring with a tenderness that spoke of healing. The night was theirs, a celebration of love, reborn, their bodies and souls entwined in a promise that nothing could break. Weeks later, Zora stood in her new office at Hamilton Tech, the Manhattan skyline sprawling beyond the window. The company was thriving, its stock soaring as investors backed her vision tech hubs and Harlem scholarships for black youth. A legacy her father would have loved. A photo of. Calvin smiled from her desk beside the silver ring. Now a wedding band, Julian had moved into her Harlem apartment, their coffee dates turning into plans for a future that blended their worlds. Their wedding had been a Harlem dream held at Etta's kitchen, with a nod to tradition, a broom-jumping ceremony, jazz from a local band, and soul food that had guests dancing till dawn. Zora's gown, a custom Laquan Smith creation, had shimmered under the neon lights. And Julian's vows. "You're my Harlem, my home, my forever," had brought tears to every eye. Now, as Zora and Julian prepared for a honeymoon in a Blue Ridge cabin, she stood before her father's photo, the Vanderbilt medallion, a gift from Nico symbolizing their unlikely alliance, on her desk. She'd cleared Calvin's name, built a future, found love again. Julian stepped behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his lips brushing her ear. "Ready for the mountains, Mrs. Wentworth." She turned, kissing him softly. "Ready for everything, Mr. Wentworth." They stepped into the Harlem night, hand in hand, the city's heartbeat. Theirs, Zora was home whole and unstoppable, a daughter of Harlem who'd fought for justice and won. Hey y'all, what a ride with Zora and Julian, right? If their love story from Harlem's neon to Tennessee's oak stole your heart, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Tell me your favorite moment. Was it the gala showdown, the Blue Ridge fight, or that magical proposal? Share this story with your crew and stay tuned for more drama, love, and Harlem fire. We'll see you soon.